Good morning, New Life. How are y'all? Good to see you. Well, I'm excited. First of all, if you're here for the first time at New Life, we welcome you. Welcome home to New Life. It's a great place, huh? We're going to be starting a new series, and it's all about identity and finding our identity. I believe the greatest gift we can ever give back to Christ is living out who He created us to be. It's our greatest act of worship, is to fully live out who He created us to be. And that's what we want to talk about over these next few weeks is how can we do that? How can we be completely who He wanted us to be? And that's even we're coupling this with the 21 days of prayer. And I believe during this time, God is going to do some things in your life. There's going to be breakthroughs that happen during this time of centering ourselves to really hear His voice. So many times He's speaking, we're just not hearing because we're not centering ourselves to really listen for His voice. And I believe that's what we're going to be doing during this time, is allowing God to really speak to us. When my son Jonathan was little, anytime he would get hurt, it was bigger than life. We're talking, it was life or death. You know, he was wounded and it was life or death. And I remember one time him and Jim was out and they had been out swimming all day, and he was out by the pool and he had been in this chair and standing up in the chair, number one, which he shouldn't have been right around the pool. And then he jumps out of the chair, but he jumps out over the arm of the chair the wrong way. And on the way, he hits a screw that had happened to come out of the chair. And so it slices his thigh from here to about down to here. And so you can imagine he's going down, so it scrapes up. So when he looks down, he just sees blood, and he sees this pile of skin that's now at the top of his leg. Well, he thinks it's the meat of his leg coming out. Like he has cut it so deep that now the meat is bulging out of his leg. And so I just hear this blood-curdling scream, and I come running out of the house, and he's like, Mom, my leg, I cut my leg all open. And I'm trying to convince him, John, it's okay, you're going to live, it's just a big scratch, but you're going to be okay. And he's like, no, Mom, no, I'm feeling sick, Mom, I'm losing so much blood, I'm feeling sick, I think I'm going to pass out. And I'm like, John, you're not losing that much blood, son, it's water with the blood going down your leg. That's not all blood you're feeling going down your leg. But me and Jim both, no matter what we did, we could not get him to look at it again to see that it wasn't as bad as he thought it was. No, he's like going crazy. Finally, I kind of shake him and I said, Jonathan, just pause long enough to look at your leg. And so here he is, and this is his action. Oh, it's not really that bad. I said, I'm trying to tell you, son. 2 seconds later, he's back in the pool and he's swimming and life goes on. But the problem is that he believed a lie as if it were the truth, and it had affected him as if it were true. How many of you in your own lives have believed a lie and it's affected your life as if it were truth? It happens in all of our lives. There's lies that we believe and they affect us as if they were truth. One of the things that I want to address this morning is the lie that I have to be strong. I have to be strong. It's a lie believed as a truth, and it affects us as if it's truth. Today, we're going to look at the most common lies that our spiritual enemy wants us to believe. And that lie can become so strong. In fact, we're in a society that tells us that we have to be strong. That if it's going to be, there you go, it's up to me. If it's going to be, it's up to me. I just got to pull myself up by the bootstraps and keep going. I've just got to keep going. I've got to work harder. I've got to perform. I've got to produce. We have to be strong. I remember when me and James, the first time we ever went back to Crossroads, and we've all let you know that we have had lots of counseling in our lives. Our marriage would have never survived had we not had counseling. And so God worked miracles in our life through this counseling. But I remember the first time we ever went back to Crossroads, which is a place in Buena Vista, Colorado, and it's a counseling center. And we went back there, and this is a truth that was revealed to us I can't even tell you what it did to our life, is that there were lies in our lives that we had believed through situations in our life that had happened. There were lies that we had believed, and they were affecting us as if they were true, and they were acting out into our lives. And this was one of the big ones in James, is that he had to be strong. It came from a situation in his life when he was a child and being held down by two adults and being slapped repeatedly across his face because they were going to make him cry. And after a while of slapping him and he didn't cry and they were exhausted and they did cry, He walked out into the woods after that, and he said, I am strong. I am strong, and I cannot be broken. Why? Because he didn't cry. So he equated tears with weakness. And so from that day forward, whatever it took to not cry, he was going to do that. And so it would cause him at times in intense moments of his life to detach from a situation. And he could become very detached and very unfeeling and unemotional. And when Pete addressed this situation in counseling, he's like, no, I've prayed through that. I've forgiven those adults. I've moved. And Pete said, but James, there's a lie that you believed at that moment, and we need to address that lie. And James said, what are you talking about? James believed it so much to be even God revealed to him in that moment that he would not be broken. And he said, no, Pete, God revealed that to me. And Pete said, no, James, because you were broken in that moment. You just didn't cry. And just because you didn't cry doesn't mean you weren't broken. And James sat there for a minute, and he kind of looked at him, and he's like, I don't even know, Pete, I don't know if I can do this. And literally we had to go back to our room, and he had to pray through it through the night, and came back the next day because he was not ready to release it. And finally, a couple of days later, Pete said, James, are you ready to give this to God? And he goes, I think I am, finally, Pete. And he surrendered that to God, and God in that moment broke that lie in him. And if any of you know my husband for any amount of time, you can see the tenderness that has developed in him over the years. Why? Because he has learned to embrace the tenderness in that he can be broken, but we can never be broken beyond what God can heal us. See, that's the truth. And so that he was weak, but God was strong in his life. And when that lie was broken, it changed the man that he was, the leader that he was. And I believe God has even blessed New Life because he's an incredible leader. Why? Because he knows he needs God in his life and the power of Christ in his life. If we don't reveal these truths, break the lie of the enemy in our life, I believe it affects how effective we even are in our life. Effective meaning how real, how operational we are. And effective, how moving, how much of a change agent we can be to the world around us. John says it like this. Can you read it with me from your outlines? John 8:44. When he lies, can you read it with me? Come on, ready, set, go. When he lies, he speaks his native tongue, for he is a liar and the father of lies. He's talking about the enemy. The enemy is a liar and the father of lies. In other words, the truth is not even in him. He can't tell the truth if he wanted to. And what he does is he takes the truth and he makes the lie so close to the truth that we believe it in our lives. And he disguises it as if it was truth. And today I believe that Jesus wants to speak into the course of your life over this time together and over these 21 days. And he's going to bring freedom to some of your lives. And once Jesus speaks into the atmosphere of your life, into the atmosphere of your soul, I believe there's going to be a shift, the same as there was in James, the same as there was in me, and you will never be the same. John 8 goes on to say, then you will know the what? The truth, and the truth will set you free. It's when the truth is revealed to your life that everything changes. Among us, there's this growing belief that we have to be strong. And there's a few kind of strengths that, if not careful, we'll rely on those strengths. And I want you to kind of rate yourself. As we go through them, I want 1 is this one doesn't really affect me, or 10, I'm off the charts on this one, okay? Number 1, some of our strength zone is emotionally strong. Emotionally strong. This is where you have the basic belief that you have to hold it all down. You have to hold it together. You have to make sure that everybody in your house is good and the atmosphere is good, and you're going to keep it all together. I have to tell you, I used to be a 10 on this one. And it's still my weakness at times because I think I got to keep peace for everybody and make sure everybody's good with everybody. Guess what? I can't do that. But what happens is on the inside, you're constantly feeling afraid and vulnerable and insecure, but no one knows because you're going to be strong. Provisionally strong. This is where you're the get her done kind of person. You're like the hummingbird. You're just all around all the time. You're fluttering from here to there and working so hard to keep all the plates spinning and all the jobs done and working all the extra hours to pay for this or pay for that. You're just trying to get it done. And you're buzzing around all the time, but on the inside, you're exhausted and you're desperate for help. Spiritually strong. Spiritually strong. That's where maybe you're the only Christian or one of the few Christians in your family or on your job or with your friends. And so you feel like you've always got to be the spiritually strong one, the one that says the right things and does the right things and prays the right prayer. And God forbid you ever slip and say a cuss word, then everybody around you's doing pray. Oh, I mean, it's just, that's it. That's the end of it. No, we can't always be spiritually strong. Or maybe you're a leader of a life group and you feel like you've always got to have the answers to the questions that people are going to ask. This used to be a big one for me. I used to hate to say, I don't know the answer, but guess what? I don't know the answer. And so it's become very easy for me to look at you and say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I'll help you find it. I can help you find it, but I don't know all the answers. None of us is that smart. Professionally strong. Some of you carry a pressure around all the time. It's this big, heavy weight on your shoulders. And you feel like you've got to be the one that always does it professionally. And if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it right. You've got to be the one to do it. And some of you are even stuck in a job that you loathe. But you feel like you got to hold it all together. And on the inside, you just want to have purpose and meaning attached to what you do in your work. Here's the lie. You've got to be strong. You've got to work harder. You've got to try harder. You've got to be better. You've got to care more. If you were just more faithful, if you just worked harder at it, then you would get her all done. Do you know what, though? I want to bust a myth for you right now. The idea that we have to be strong is not God's idea. It's man's. It's man's idea. It's not God's. We have to come to grips with our strong beliefs and get healthy in our assessment of our own limitations. Because Jesus wants you to hear his truth and discern the enemy's lies. This last week, me and James was in Fresno, and we came across a young man by the name of Mario, and he went to our church for a while, and he just moved to Fresno. And he said, James, Lydia, I just need y'all to sit down. I really need to tell you my story. He said, I feel impressed. I'm supposed to tell you my story. He began to unveil his story, and it was incredible. I can't even give it all to you today, but I'm going to give it to you in a nutshell. He said, by the time I was raised in a bad family, by the time I was 14 years old, I was addicted to meth. I was in the gang, and I was trying to make a name for myself. I get thrown in prison at 17 years old because I told him I was 18 because I was too good to go to juvie. I wanted to be in the big prison because I wanted to make a name for myself. He said, my sister comes down and tells him I'm really 17, so they released me to my sister, told me, take him to juvie. So she takes me to juvie, and they tell me, we don't have any record of you, so you're free to go. He said, so I go on about my life. He said, after a long period of time, I end up in Arizona. A guy comes in, gives me a job, wants me to come and help him sell cars. And he said, I worked my way all the way to the top. I'm in financing now, and I'm making six figures. I moved to Vegas, and I've got the penthouse, and I'm making six figures, and I have got the life. And he said, I'm so-called living the life, doing all kinds of stuff I have no business doing, but I am living the life. And he said, I'm sitting on a bench with one of my friends, and I look at him and I say, man, we have made it. Look at us. We've made it. And his friend looks at him and says, yes, we have, thanks to God. And he said, thanks to God? What are you talking about, thanks to God? God ain't never done nothing for me. I did this. I pulled myself out of that life. I made something of myself. I worked hard for this job. God ain't done nothing for me. He said, within 2 weeks of me making that statement, it was like God sat back and said, okay, son, you think you've done it all yourself, I'll let you. He said, within 2 weeks, I walked into my job, I was top. He said, never had a bad rating in my life. Walked into my job, was handed my last paycheck, and I said, what's this? Why? He said, because dude, you've been a fugitive for 15 years. You got to go back to Bakersfield. He said, so here I am. I'm now in debt. I've lost my job. I head back to Bakersfield, and my lawyer, I hire a lawyer, he tells me, you have no chance. You're a fugitive. He said, well, get me bail. He said, you can't get bail. You're a fugitive. What do you not understand? You don't have a chance, dude. You're going up for at least 4 years. You've been on the run for 15 years. A lie that he had told at 17 had caught up to him. He goes before the judge, and everyone has told him he don't have a chance. The judge looks at him and laughs. And he said, son, the lie from 17 caught up to you, didn't it? He said, but I'm going to show you mercy. And he said, you're free to go. Mario said, I walked out of that place knowing God had moved in my life. He said, I had no job, I had no money. I'm back where I started from, in Bakersfield, with no job, no money. And he said, my sister tells me I can get you a job. but it was minimum wage. He said, I ain't taking no job at minimum wage. I was making 6 figures. Man, I was rolling in the money. She said, well, you ain't now. And he said, so I moved to Fresno and I take a job at El Pollo Loco. And he said, I'm making $10 an hour. And he said, one day they called me and asked me to take chicken to deliver it to this dealership. And I walk in with this bucket of chicken, and he said, I look at the guy and he said, hey man, you need to hire me. He said, you check my ratings out. You can go right now online. You check all my ratings out. Man, I was top of the line. And the guy laughed at him. He said, yeah, and now you're delivering chicken? And laughed at him. Mario said, I walked out of that place. And he ended up back in Bakersfield. And he started to work for a dealer here in town. Dealership, not a dealer. Let me write that right. Dealership. Yeah. So he goes back to work. He ends up back financing. And the man gives him things to listen to help his life. And he gives him a tape or a CD, whatever it was, and says, here, I want you to listen to this. And he listens, and he said, who is this? And he said, well, that's my pastor. He said, I go to New Life. So he comes to New Life, Mario does. And he said, I just want to tell you, New Life changed my life forever. He said, you gave me the tools to turn my life around. And he said, about a month ago, my boss walks up to me and he says, hey, I'm thinking of buying this dealership in Fresno. He said, Fresno? You're going to buy a dealership? Which one? And he tells him. He said, I'll go there tomorrow. He said, no, you have to move to Fresno. He said, I'll move to Fresno tomorrow. He said, so here I walk back in to the same dealership that laughed at me. And he said, and as I did, he said, I didn't say nothing to nobody. And he didn't even tell his boss this story until last week. He said, because I wanted to make sure my heart was right, because he said, I don't want to tell them guys because they're still here. The same ones that laughed, they're still here. And he said, but you know what? It don't have anything to do with them. It has to do with my God. My God brought me here to show me he's brought me full circle. He has fully restored my life. And he said, and he brought me here for that reason. And he said, it took me admitting that I am weak, that my strength is limited. It took me admitting that for God to bring me full circle in my life. And me and James had the honor of reaching across and holding his hand and praying a blessing over his life. See, we're in miracle territory when we admit that our strength is limited. God, we're in a good place. You may have come here today and you go, Lydia, I'm at the end of my rope. Man, I am ran out. I don't have nothing else to give. Bingo. You're in great shape. God has great things in store for you. You're at the starting point. That is what God wants to do in you. See, when I know where Lydia ends and where God begins, then I am in good shape. I'm in miracle territory, because you might want to jot this down. God's strength is unlimited. God's strength is unlimited in your life. In fact, Isaiah 40 says, even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar with wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. If you read the scriptures before this, it's all talking about how wonderful the power of God is and how mighty he is. I remember reading through that, and God, there's one part, and he says, how can you not know? How can you not understand? And he had me write my name in there. Lydia, how can you not know? How can you not understand? In other words, this right here, that if you hope in the Lord, you will mount up with wings as eagles. You will run and not grow weary. You will walk and not faint. I have to be bold enough to say, man, we're in the middle of miracle territory because we are weak. And this is the truth that we're replacing with the lie of the enemy. He says you have to be strong. The truth is you have to be weak. You have to be weak. The Apostle Paul, we're talking the greatest apostle of all time, right? We're talking the Apostle Paul, the man who wrote 3/4 of the New Testament. The one who had the miraculous encounter with God on the road to Damascus, where God changed his name from Saul to Paul, where he's a persecutor of Christians, even a murderer of Christians. And now here he is speaking the truth of Christ, and in prison and beaten and everything else for the sake of Christ. This is the same man, the Apostle Paul. Well, it says that he had a thorn in his side. In other words, an affliction in his life. And he prayed for God to remove this affliction. In fact, he begged for it to go away. He pleaded with God to take it from him. In fact, he would has bouts of depression and darkness in his life because of this affliction. We can all guess at what it is. Scholars have guessed throughout the years, but nobody really knows what it is. But this is the truth that Paul came to in 2 Corinthians. He said, because he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. This is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness. For when I am weak, then I am made strong. My grace is sufficient for you. I delight in my weakness. We have to learn to literally delight in our weakness. About 7 years ago in my life, this was never made more clear. I came through a time in my life, in fact, me and Pastor Wendy were doing some ministry together and trying to help some people, and me and her both hit the wall at the same time. I mean, boom, nose first, shattered face, you know what I'm saying. I literally could not hardly walk in the church building, because when I would walk in, I would get a panic attack because I was so afraid somebody was going to come up and ask something of me, and I had nothing to give. And so I would literally just panic, and I would run in the office and hide. Like, oh God, I have nothing to give. If they ask anything, I have nothing. And through that situation, God allowed me to get to a situation where I know that I am weak, that I am limited, that at any moment in my life, I'm going to let somebody down. I'm going to disappoint somebody. There's somebody today that I will disappoint because I don't have enough or I can't give enough. Guess what? I don't even want to be the person who used to try to be it all and do it all and think I can have it all. No, because I know that when I rely on Jesus and I admit that I am limited, he is strong in my life. It is who he is, and he made me strong. And this year has been the craziest year of my life. There is more change going on right now than is in my own mind. Sometimes it's like, wow. But you know what? God has reminded me time and time and time again during this season, because it's been good change and then there's been hard change. You know what I'm talking about? There's been good things, there's been hard things, but all of them, God is in the middle of it. And my strength is limited, but his strength is perfect, and he has showed me that. In fact, there was a Greek word that came to me during this period of time. It was eudikale, there we go, I'll get it out. Eudikale, and it simply means think well of, to delight, to embrace. I want to ask you the question right now. What weakness is it in your life that you need to embrace? In fact, you need to delight in. You need to embrace it. You need to delight in it. What is it that right now in this moment the Spirit of God is shining the light on? What is the lie that you have believed? And God is speaking truth into you. And I believe he's going to do it even more so over the course of this 21 days. I'm going to give you a little Greek lesson real quick, okay? This Southern girl is going to speak some Greek to you, okay? When he says, my grace is sufficient for you, my power is made perfect in your weakness. When he says my grace, the Greek word is charis, which literally translated means unmerited favor. It means divine influence upon your heart. It's something of heaven, of God, and not of us. Sufficient is arkadio, and it means eliminating a barrier. It means sufficient or exactly enough. For my power is dunamis, and dunamis is where we get our word dynamite. And it literally means explosive, miraculous power. Is made, is tetelestai. And it means term of completion. It means made finished. It is over. It literally translates to completely fulfilled. In other words, there's nothing left to do. The next thing is weakness. Weakness is asthenio. And asthenio means disease or infirmity or brokenness. And so what it is saying, all broke down, is God's divine influence is exactly enough to meet your every need, for his explosive, miraculous power is made completely perfect in you when you are broken before him. When you are broken before him, your spiritual enemy would love for you to continue to believe that you can be strong in your own power. Because see, if he keeps you there in that lie, you are no threat whatsoever to him. And he will keep you there. He will keep you striving to do it and be it all. And he wants you to stay right there. But can I tell you that when you come to the truth that God has all the power, all the strength, and you are limited, when you embrace that, you are now a threat to him. Because he knows the power of Jesus Christ. He knows the power of God in your life. And when you tap into that power, he is threatened by you. He is afraid of you. And he knows that he is no match for that power and for that strength. The lie is, I have to be strong. But the truth is, you have to be weak. And so do I. Ephesians 6 says, finally be strong in the Lord. Can you underline strong in the Lord? And in his mighty power, underline his mighty power. You see, at that time in my life 7 years ago, it ended with me completely breaking down. I've never broke a dish in my life on purpose. And I literally broke every dish that I could get my hand on in my kitchen, screaming at the top of my lungs, losing my mind. My husband thought he was going to have to call 3B. I'm not even joking. I was wigging out. I broke every dish. I'm literally sitting in the middle of my kitchen floor with all these broken pieces all around me. And as I looked at it and wept uncontrollably, that was representation of my life. But you know what? I was never at a better place because my strength was gone, was none. But I was in miracle territory. I was in grace territory. The restoration power of God was made so real in my life that night. I heard his voice clearer than I believe I've ever heard it in my life. In that moment, my grace is sufficient for you, my child. My strength is made perfect in your weakness if you just come to me. Right after that, he brought me a song. God always heals me through songs. Song is my lifeline. And he brought me this song, and I want to sing it to you because I believe it's going to be the same for some of you. Through this time, God is going to give you a resurrection in your life. When you admit you're powerless, but admit he has all the power. I'm in need of a resurrection in my life, God.